Chapter 5. Having told me the name of Mr. Candy's assistant, Betteredge appeared to think that we had wasted enough of our time on an insignificant subject. He resumed the perusal of Rosanna Spearman's letter. On my side, I sat at the window, waiting until he had done. Little by little, the impression produced on me by Ezra Jennings, it seemed perfectly unaccountable in such a situation as mine that any human being should have produced an impression on me at all, faded from my mind. My thoughts flowed back into their former channel. Once more I forced myself to look my own incredible position resolutely in the face. Once more I reviewed in my own mind the course which I had at last summoned composure enough to plan out for the future. To go back to London that day, to put the whole case before Mr. Bruff, and, last and most important, to obtain, no matter by what means or at what sacrifice, a personal interview with Rachel. This was my plan of action, so far as I was capable of forming it at the time. There was more than an hour still to spare before the train started, and there was the bare chance that Betteredge might discover something in the unread portion of Rosanna Spearman's letter which it might be useful for me to know before I left the house in which the diamond had been lost. For that chance I was now waiting. The letter ended in these terms: "You have no need to be angry, Mr. Franklin, even if I did feel some little triumph at knowing that I held all of your prospects in life in my own hands. Anxieties and fears soon came back to me. With the view Sergeant Cuff took of the loss of the diamond, he would be sure to end in examining our linen and our dresses. There was no place in my room, there was no place in the house, which I could feel satisfied would be safe from him. How to hide the nightgown so that not even the sergeant could find it, and how to do that without losing one moment of precious time. These were not easy questions to answer. My uncertainties ended in my taking a way that may make you laugh. I undressed and put the nightgown on me. You had worn it, and I had another little moment of pleasure in wearing it after you. The next news that reached us in the servants' hall showed that I had not made sure of the nightgown a moment too soon. Sergeant Cuff wanted to see the washing book. I found it and took it to him in my lady's sitting room. The sergeant and I had come across each other more than once in former days. I was certain he would know me again, and I was not certain of what he might do when he found me employed as a servant in a house in which a valuable jewel had been lost. In this suspense, I felt it would be a relief to me to get the meeting between us over, and to know the worst of it at once. He looked at me as if I was a stranger when I handed him the washing book, and he was very specially polite in thanking me for bringing it. I thought those were both bad signs. There was no knowing what he might say of me behind my back. There was no knowing how soon I might not find myself taken in custody on suspicion and searched. It was then time for your return from seeing Mr. Godfrey Ablewhite off by the railway, and I went to your favorite walk in the shrubbery to try for another chance of speaking to you. We'll just try that part of the paragraph again. I might not find myself taken in custody on suspicion and searched. It was then time for your return from seeing Mr. Godfrey Ablewhite off by the railway, and I went to your favorite walk in the shrubbery to try for another chance of speaking to you. The last chance, for all I knew to the contrary, that I might have. You never appeared, and what was worse still, Mr. Betteredge and Sergeant Cuff passed by the place where I was hiding, and the sergeant saw me. I had no choice after that but to return to my proper place and my proper work before more disasters happened to me. Just as I was going to step across the path, you came back from the railway. You were making straight for the shrubbery when you saw me. I am certain, sir, you saw me, and you turned away as if I'd got the plague, and went into the house. I made the best of my way indoors, returning by the servants' entrance. There was nobody in the laundry room at that time, and I sat down there alone. I have told you already of the thoughts which a shivering sand put in my head. Those thoughts came back to me now. I wondered to myself which it would be harder to do if things went on in this manner, to hear Mr. Franklin Blake's indifference to me, or to jump into the quicksand and end it forever in that way. It's useless to ask me to account for my own conduct at this time. I try, and I can't understand it myself. Note by Franklin Blake. The writer is entirely mistaken, poor creature. I never noticed her. My intention was certainly to have taken a turn in the shrubbery, but remembering at the same moment that my aunt might wish to see me after my return from the railway, I altered my mind and went into the house. Why didn't I stop you when you avoided me in that cruel manner? Why didn't I call out, Mr. Franklin, I've got something to say to you. It concerns yourself, and you must and shall hear it. You were at my mercy. I had got the whip hand of you, as they say. And, better than that, I had the means, if I could only make you trust me, of being useful to you in the future. Of course, I never supposed that you, a gentleman, had stolen the diamond for the mere pleasure of stealing it. No, Penelope had heard Miss Rachel, and I had heard Mr. Betteredge talk about your extravagance and your debts. It was plain enough to me that you had taken the diamond to sell it, or pledge it, and so to get the money of which you stood in need. Well, I could have told you of a man in London who would have advanced a good large sum on the jewel, and who would have asked no awkward questions about it either. Why didn't I speak to you? Why didn't I speak to you? I wondered whether the risks and difficulties of keeping the nightgown were as much as I could imagine, without having other risks and difficulties added to them. This might have been the case with some women, but how could it be the case with me? In the days when I was a thief, I had run 50 times greater risks, and found my way out of difficulties to which this difficulty was mere child's play. I have been apprenticed, as you may say, to frauds and deceptions, some of them on such a grand scale, and managed so cleverly that they became famous and appeared in the newspapers. Was such a little thing as the keeping of the nightgown likely to weigh on my spirits, and to set my heart sinking within me at the time when I ought to have spoken to you? What nonsense to ask the question. The thing couldn't be. Where's the use of my dwelling in this, on my own folly? The plain truth is plain enough, surely. Behind your back, I loved you with all my heart and soul. Before your face, there's no denying it, I was frightened of you, frightened of making you angry with me, frightened of what you might say to me, though you had taken the diamond, if I presumed to tell you that I had found you out. I'd gone as near to it as I dared when I spoke to you in the library. You had not turned your back on me then. You had not started away from me as if I got the plague. I tried to provoke myself into feeling angry with you, and to arouse up my courage in that way. No, I couldn't feel anything but the misery and the mortification of it. You're a plain girl. You've got a crooked shoulder. You're only a housemaid. What do you mean by attempting to speak to me? You never uttered a word of that, Mr. Franklin, but you said it all to me nevertheless. Is such madness as this to be accounted for? No, there's nothing to be done but to confess it, and let it be. I ask your pardon once more for this wandering of my pen. There is no fear of its happening again. I am close at the end now. The first person who disturbed me by coming into the empty room was Penelope. She had found out my secret long since, and she had done her best to bring me to my senses, and done it kindly, too. Ah, she said, I know why you're sitting here and fretting all by yourself. The best thing that can happen for your advantage, Rosanna, will be for Mr. Franklin's visit here to come to an end. It's my belief that he won't be long now before he leaves the house. In all my thoughts of you, I never thought of your going away. I couldn't speak to Penelope, could only look at her. I've just left Miss Rachel, Penelope went on, and a hard matter I've had to put up with her temper. She says the house is unbearable to her with the police in it, and she's determined to speak to my lady this evening, and to go to her Aunt Ablewhite tomorrow. If she does that, Mr. Franklin will be the next to find a reason for going away. You may depend on it. I recovered the use of my tongue at that. Do you mean to say Mr. Franklin will go with her? I asked. Only too gladly, if she would let him, but she won't. He has been made to feel her temper. He is in her black books, too, and that after having done all he can to help her, poor fellow. No. If they don't make it up here before tomorrow, you will see Miss Rachel go one way, and Mr. Franklin another. Where he may betake himself to, I can't say, but he will never stay here, Rosanna, after Miss Rachel has left us. I managed to master the despair I felt at the prospect of your going away. To own the truth, I saw a little glimpse of hope for myself, if there was really a serious disagreement between Miss Rachel and you. Do you know, I asked, what the quarrel is between them? It's all on Miss Rachel's side, Penelope said, and for anything I know to the contrary, it's all Miss Rachel's temper and nothing else. I am loath to distress you, Rosanna, but don't run away with the notion that Mr. Franklin is ever likely to quarrel with her. He is a great deal too fond of her for that. She had only just spoken those cruel words when there came a call to us from Mr. Betteredge. All the indoor servants were to assemble in the hall, and then we were to go in one by one and be questioned in Mr. Betteredge's room by Sergeant Cuff. It came to my turn to go in, after her ladyship's maid and the upper housemaid had been questioned first. Sergeant Cuff's inquiries, though he wrapped them up very cunningly, soon showed me that those two women, the bitterest enemies I had in the house, had made their discoveries outside my door on the Tuesday afternoon, and again on the Thursday night. They had told the sergeant enough to open his eyes to some part of the truth. He rightly believed me to have made a new nightgown secretly, but he wrongly believed that the paint-stained nightgown to be mine. I felt satisfied of another thing from what he said, which it puzzled me to understand. He suspected me, of course, of being concerned at the disappearance of the diamond, but at the same time he let me see, purposely as I thought, that he did not consider me as the chief person responsible for the loss of the jewel. He appeared to think that I had been acting under the direction of somebody else. Who that person might be, I couldn't guess then, and can't guess now. In this uncertainty, one thing was plain, that Sergeant Cuff was miles away from knowing the whole truth. You were safe as long as the nightgown was safe, and not a moment longer. I quite despair of making you understand the distress and terror which pressed upon me now. It was impossible for me to risk wearing your nightgown any longer. I might find myself taken off at a moment's notice to the police court at Frizinghall, to be charged on suspicion and searched accordingly. While Sergeant Cuff still left me free, I had to choose, and at once, between destroying the nightgown or hiding it in some safe place, at some safe distance from the house. If I had only been a little less fond of you, I think I should have destroyed it. But oh, how could I destroy the only thing I had, which proved that I had saved you from discovery? If we did come to an explanation together, and if you suspected me of having had some bad motive, and denied it all, how could I win upon you to trust me, unless I had the nightgown to produce? Was it wronging you to believe, as I did, and do still, that you might hesitate to let a poor girl like me be the sharer of your secret, and your accomplice in the theft which your money troubles had tempted you to commit? Think of your cold behavior to me, sir, and you will hardly wonder at my unwillingness to destroy the only claim on your confidence and your gratitude which it was my fortune to possess. I determined to hide it, and the place I fixed on was the place I knew best, the Shivering Sand. As soon as the questioning was over, I made the first excuse that came to my head, and got leave to go out for a breath of fresh air. I went straight to Cobb's Hole, to Mr. Yolland's cottage. His wife and daughter were the best friends I had. Don't suppose I trusted them with your secret. I've trusted nobody. All I wanted was to write this letter to you, and to have a safe opportunity of taking the nightgown off me. Suspected as I was, I could do neither of those things with any sort of security up at the house. And now I have nearly got through with my long letter, writing it alone in Lucy Yolland's bedroom. When it is done, I shall go downstairs with the nightgown rolled up and hidden under my cloak. I shall find the means I want for keeping it safe and dry in its hiding place among the litter of old things in Mrs. Yolland's kitchen, and then I shall go to the Shivering Sand. Don't be afraid of my letting my footmarks betray me, and hide the nightgown down in the sand, where no living creature can find it without being first let into the secret by myself. And when that's done, what then? Then, Mr. Franklin, I shall have 2 reasons for making another attempt to say the words to you which I have not said yet. If you leave the house, as Penelope believes you will leave it, and if I haven't spoken to you before that, I shall lose my opportunity forever. That is one reason. Then again, there is the comforting knowledge, if my speaking does make you angry, that I have got the nightgown ready to plead my case for me as nothing else can. That is my other reason. If these 2 together don't harden my heart against the coldness which has hitherto frozen it up, I mean the coldness of your treatment of me, then there will be the end of my efforts, and the end of my life. Yes, if I miss my next opportunity, if you are as cruel as ever, and if I feel it again as I felt it already, goodbye to the world which has grudged me the happiness that it gives to others. Goodbye to life, which nothing but a little kindness from you can ever make pleasurable to me again. Don't blame yourself, sir, if it ends in this way, but try, do try, to feel some forgiving sorrow for me. I shall take care that you find out what I've done for you when I am past telling you of it myself. Will you say something kind of me then, in the same gentle way that you have when you speak to Miss Rachel? If you do that, and if there are such things as ghosts, I believe my ghost will hear it, and tremble with the pleasure of it. This time I left off, I'm making myself cry. How am I to see my way to the hiding place if I let these useless tears come and blind me? Besides, why should I look at the gloomy side? Why not believe while I can that it will end well after all? I may find you in a good humor tonight, or if not, I may succeed better tomorrow morning. I shan't improve my plain face by fretting, shall I? Who knows, but I may have filled all those weary long pages of paper for nothing. They will go for safety's sake, never mind now for what other reason, into the hiding place along with the nightgown. It has been hard work, writing my letter. Oh, if we only ended understanding each other, how I shall enjoy tearing it up. I beg to remain, sir, your true lover and humble servant, Rosanna Spearman. The reading of the letter was completed by Betteredge in silence. After carefully putting it back in the envelope, he sat thinking, with his head bowed down and his eyes on the ground. Betteredge, I said, is there any hint to guide me at the end of the letter? He looked up slowly with a heavy sigh. There is nothing to guide you, Mr. Franklin, he answered. If you take my advice, you will keep the letter in the cover till these present anxieties of yours have come to an end. It will sorely distress you whenever you read it. Don't read it now. I put the letter away in my pocketbook. A glance back at the 16th and 17th chapters of Betteredge's narrative will show that there really was a reason for my thus sparing myself, at a time when my fortitude had been already cruelly tried. Twice over the unhappy woman had made her last attempt to speak to me, and twice over it had been my misfortune, God knows how innocently, to repel the advances she had made to me. On the Friday night, as Betteredge truly describes it, she had found me alone at the billiard table. Her manner and language suggested to me, and would have suggested to any man under the circumstances, that she was about to confess a guilty knowledge of the disappearance of the diamond. For her own sake, I had purposely shown no special interest in what was coming. For her own sake, I had purposely looked at the billiard balls instead of looking at her, and what had been the result? I had sent her away from me, wounded to the heart. On the Saturday again, on the day when she must have foreseen, after what Penelope had told her, that my departure was close at hand, the same fatality still pursued us. She had once more attempted to meet me in the shrubbery walk, and she had found me there in company with Betteredge and Sergeant Cuff. In her hearing, the sergeant, with his own underhand object in view, had appealed to my interest in Rosanna Spearman. Again, for the poor creature's own sake, I had met the police officer with a flat denial, and had declared, loudly declared, so that she might hear me too, that I felt no interest whatever in Rosanna Spearman. At those words, solely designed to warn her against attempting to gain my private ear, she had turned away and left the place, cautioned of her danger, as I then believed, self-doomed to destruction as I know now. From that point, I have already traced the succession of events which led to the astounding discovery of the quicksand. The retrospect is now complete. I may leave the miserable story of Rosanna Spearman, to which, even at this distance in time, I cannot revert without a pang of distress, to suggest for itself all that is here purposely left unsaid. I may pass from the suicide of the Shivering Sand, with its strange and terrible influence on my present position and future prospects, to interests which concern the living people of this narrative, and to events which were already paving my way for the slow and toilsome journey from the darkness to the light.